Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Dante James. I'm the facilitator of the training subcommittee of the Racial Equity and Policing Commission. And today is March 17th, Wednesday, and we appreciate everyone who is here, commissioners, police officers, assistant chief, and city staff. So hopefully everyone has had a chance to take a look at the agenda and went out sometime late this morning. But it's, I think, mostly just a continuation of the discussions around the recruitment and hiring process, that outreach process, and things of that nature. We have some outstanding requests for information that'll come from HR. The police department provided us with the recruiting video that we can take a look at in just a bit. And Commissioner Prospero is not here, but he wanted to have a conversation around the idea of a possible full-time recruiter. So just as a start to the day, I want to again welcome everyone who's here. Appreciate your engagement and participation this evening or afternoon anyway. Just going through the agenda, the report to the City Council, I think I left it on inadvertently, but obviously everyone knows the City Council presentation that we presented went well. The conversation from the school subcommittee and their recommendations that were essentially approved by the commission last week will be going to presentation to City Council, I believe next Tuesday, but I can check on that. But we'll make sure that each of you also receive an invite to that presentation to the City Council, just so you can be there and support as needed.
Dante, I was not at the meeting last week, so can somebody send me a copy of what was approved?
Yes, sir. I'll make sure you get a copy of that.
Thank you.
I know Coletta is listening, so it's probably on your way already. But we will certainly get you that. And there was no one, I don't believe, on to make any report from the youth committee. So we'll just put that on hold in case someone does show up from the youth committee or Commissioner Prospero possibly. I've been asked to reinforce the idea of the partner pair program, and not very many people have signed up for that, even though it was requested by a significant number of the commissioners. And so just once again, reiterating that information is waiting to go to Coletta. If you have an interest in the partner pair program, partnering with one of the police officers who has committed to being a part of that process. If there are no additional signups for that, there have been several commissioners who said they wanted to participate with 2 officers. And so I know that Colette has been holding off on doing that until ensuring that everybody who wanted partner pair individually had signed up. So if you haven't signed up and you're interested, please reach out to Coletta today or tomorrow, or that option will probably slowly disappear. Anything, Coletta, that I misstated or you'd like to add to?
No, Dante, that was perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you to the commissioners here who have already signed up.
Thank you. I want to introduce, or have him introduce himself, Dustin Parks. Commissioner Hawkins suggested that he would be maybe informative, or at least interesting for us to at least hear what his position is at the police department, what some of his engagement and work is. And so, Mr. Parks, I would certainly invite you to introduce yourself and maybe give us just a little bit of your background on the work that you do at Salt Lake City.
Sure. Yeah, so thanks for having me. So like you said, I'm Dustin Parks. I'm the community program manager for Salt Lake City Police Department. So I oversee a lot of the outreach efforts. And then basically I'm a liaison between the community and then the police department and vice versa. So I oversee, like I do the recruitment work to do the Citizens Academy. I do have a Latino coalition I started. We do church basketball leagues with the officers at Calvary Baptist. I do all the chat with the cops. I'm the ADA coordinator for our department, the volunteer coordinator, and then I also oversee the interns for our department. What else do I do? I do all the Please Pay It Forward events. So we do a back to school one with the kids in August. So we take about 50 underprivileged kids shopping for back to school supplies. And then we do another one around Christmas time in December where we take 50 kids shopping for Christmas or different, we pick different schools every year. So I work closely with the Salt Lake City School Foundation to choose those kids. We do a book drive as well every year. And then any other miscellaneous like meetings or community events I attend. So once we start going out to all the community events, I go to African Festival, Friendly Island Tongan Festival, as many events as we can fit into our schedule. I usually a representative there with an officer. And then, yeah, I think that's kind of the main scope. So like I said, my main job and focus is to create a positive relationship within the community and then the police department. And so like I said, I'm not an officer. So it's someone that someone can kind of build that bridge between the community and the police department.
Thank you. One, certainly glad that you're there. Do you have any engagement with the outreach or recruitment process for new hires?
So I do a lot of the recruitment for like our Explore programs, for the youth programs. I go to the schools and stuff and we talk with them. As not, I mean, if I go to different events and stuff, I'll do recruitment. So I do have one specific program I started with the Refugee Client Services in Horizonte, the school. They got a grant over there. So we're in the process now of doing a program where we're just recruiting specifically a refugee program. So basically it was tied to the InPost, but since we got rid of the InPost, we've expanded it more to basically kind of teach them and have a mentoring tutoring program and walk them through the process so they have a better chance of getting hired as a police officer. So we have different partners and stuff that are on that, and we're just getting ready to start that up again. We just had our orientation on Saturday for that, so in a couple weeks. The hope is that it's not just for refugees, but we can offer it to all communities and people and minorities and stuff who want to join the police department. That's a good free educational piece that they can join at any time. So it's not going to be a one-time enrollment. It'll be an open enrollment. So as people come and go, they can get that kind of that extra tutelage and stuff from not only police officers but people in the community as well. So that's my role. I don't have a main role with the recruitment process, but I do help out as much as I can in that effort. So.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners or officers, any questions?
Well, we've certainly appreciated Dustin's work with Calvary Baptist and the basketball. The young people now feel much more comfortable around officers, and I think that's the way it ought to be. We would be interested in talking to you at some point, however, about Citizens Academy and trying to get more of our people engaged in that. So thank you, Dustin.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
I'm not cutting anybody off. Also, Dustin, I just want to echo my appreciation for taking the time to be here. I was curious about what the Latino Coalition is, and also maybe a little detail on chat with cops. Then,
I'll start with the Latino Coalition. I started that about 3 years ago because there was a lot of unrest when Trump was first elected with people in that community. There wasn't a lot of trust, and there's a fear for them to come to the police department. So I got together and I was meeting with different Latino leaders, and we decided we all have the same mission, so it was better just to form a coalition. So that's what I did. I reached out, and then we have different leaders like the Mexican consulates there, Brandy Farmer, Centro Civico, and different other Latino leaders in the community. And the basis of that is finding better ways to kind of get our message out to the community and building trust, vice versa. So they've been an integral part of what we do, and we've kind of really grown with that. One thing that we're getting ready to work on, is there a question? Or?
Not sure where we're getting feedback, but
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing that we're working on for our next meeting is we're all going to get together to kind of put a mini training together to kind of educate the public and police officers about the culture that goes on in Latino community, things that they're seeing in like their own communities in Rose Park and Glendale and certain areas around Salt Lake City, and putting something together that's a visual and using the Latino communities leaders that are from those communities to help put that training together. So it's been a great partnership so far. And that's something we meet third Tuesday of every month at the PSB. But so, and then what was your question? What was the second one?
The chat with cops, if I understood you correctly.
Yeah, so it used to be called Coffee with the Cop. So what I would do is, I'd pick different districts. We had the 7 different districts for the CIU. So now we've kind of transitioned that. So I wanted to do something different. So what I did is I worked with Fatima Dairy from the mayor's office, and we would pick different refugee-owned businesses or different local businesses to support them, because we'd go in, we'd pay for all the coffee and the beverages and all the snacks and stuff, and we'd invite people from the community or those districts to come in and just talk with an officer in a non-threatening environment, something relaxed, sit down and have a one-on-one conversation. So since COVID, we've kind of had a pivot, and I've done a couple now. I'm planning on one to do with online. So with the new community liaison officers, to do one like a Facebook Live or a video recording where people could send in their messages and ask the officers questions. So that's something we're working on now. And then I've also done a couple with the Mexican consulate. So we have a Spanish speaking officer that will go, and then any questions that they have pertaining to their community, he was there to kind of answer those. And we're hoping to do those quarterly, maybe every 3 or 4 months in partnership with them.
And just one more question. I found that law enforcement isn't great about promoting the positive things that we do, that you do out in the community. Is this something that's being put out there to be recognized, so that it's one of the strengths of the department?
It's hard for me to speak on that. I mean, yeah, I put it out as much as I can. So we have our own community outreach Twitter and our own community outreach Instagram posts. So those avenues I put it out, and every once in a while, like the National Italian American Society will ask me to come onto their radio station and talk about the different community programs we have. And then I do the same thing with some Latino radio programs about once or 4 times a year. It's hard to promote myself though, so.
Gotta do it, man. Gotta. You have to put the strengths of the department out there.
But I think that's one of the things that I'm really trying to focus on, because I think a lot of the things that the community are asking for, we do a lot of those things. It's just trying to educate the public. I've been working with Sean Newell a lot. Some of you may know him, about trying to do those same things. It's just kind of educate the public of the programs we have, because we have a lot of great resources and that they're free. I just don't think the public knows about some of them. So that falls on me too, to do a better job getting out there and getting that message across. So.
Yeah, you better get on that, Dustin. It doesn't seem like it. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Are you the one and only community engagement person at the police department?
So, I mean, I think it's the responsibility of all officers to have some role in community engagement, right? But as far as like my department, community outreach, I'm the only one now, yes, but I work closely with our media relations department as well. And then I'm in the process of trying to get some collaterals to come. So basically they can adjust their shift and come to certain events and stuff as well. So.
Okay. Since a piece of this, the task of this commission is to take a look at the police department's budget, if you had your unlimited budget, what would you add to the work you do?
I mean, there's a lot of more, like there's a lot of stuff that we can do, with outreach and stuff. I'm limited to somewhat, but I think the main focus would be is to kind of create more coalitions, getting into schools and do more in the schools. That's a good question. There's a lot. Maybe if you give me some time, I can put some talking points and some key points. I can really think about that, but I'm sure there's a lot more we can do. There's always more that we can do. There's a lot of partnerships and stuff that I have created that, I'd like to foster if I had more people. So.
Mm-hmm. No, I would encourage you to put some thoughts down on paper for us, because we have made recommendations that are budget related so far, and so we're looking at how to not only get the best bang for your buck, but how do you make sure that the money is where it belongs to get the best for that community engagement and all the best work that the department does?
Yeah, and I've been working on, I've worked with our Jordan Smith, our grant writer for the department. I worked with her to kind of come up with alternative ways and creative ways to find funding to kind of support some of these programs as well. Like the refugee recruitment program with Horizonte, they got helped them with doing the grant for that and putting the work in, and then he was able to get granted the grant to pay for all that as well, to pay for the teacher that teaches those classes. So, just thinking of creative ways to keep these programs coming and, being more ways that we can reach out and stuff.
Okay, thank you. But yeah, I would certainly encourage you to put some thoughts on paper if you think it would be helpful.
Sure.
Yep. Commissioner Suarez, did you have a question or?
Yeah, quick question, Dustin.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm just wondering, how does the community interact with you? Do they know that you're a civilian and not a police officer?
Yeah, I mean, I wear a different uniform. I don't wear a police uniform. I don't carry a gun or anything like that. So I don't, I do the best I can to promote that I'm not a police officer. And I go to a lot of community events. That's why, meeting people like you and going to these different meetings is so important, just to get my name out there so people do realize who I am and, what my purpose is and my role is within the department.
Yeah, I'm just curious if they would, I guess how to say this is that they take what you're saying valid or being, I'm not sure how to say this, but sometimes people want to see people the community wants to see people in uniform.
Right.
But I think that I love what you're doing, and I think if you had more staff, and as long as that interaction was positive and it represented the police department without actually having police officers. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, my 100%, my goal is just to have positive interactions, right? That's my whole focus is, just positive interactions with getting the public to trust the police department. So that, I mean, that's my main focus, right? So it can be in someone that the community can trust and come to, and then creating those positive interactions and taking the ideas and, fears that they may have back to the police department, and vice versa too, and kind of teaching and educating the public from the police point of view as well. So I'm just trying to be that middle ground and that bridge. So.
Can I speak up real quick to Justin's role?
Sure.
We actually worked together, and he did have a full-time officer working with him on the community outreach unit, but due to staffing, we had to adjust it. But that's why we're trying to get the collateral officers to be working with Dustin. So when they do have those police questions, and he does go to the community events, he does have a police officer standing by his side so that they can see that as a civilian, working for the police department, he works hand in hand with the police officers, and he works with our PR unit. So he does have that, ability to get answers from them.
Thank you. And thank your background singers too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
That's great.
What does that mean, Dustin? Collaterals?
So they're police officers they're maybe patrol officers, but they have basically a side assignment, kind of like the subcommittee. So their role would be to work with me to go into different community events. So I'm the main liaison for the refugee providers meeting. So maybe that officer would assist me in going to all those meetings or going to all the refugee events. So that's basically what a collateral assignment is. So there's still police officers or detectives in the department that kind of, adjust or volunteer their time to help out with outreach efforts.
And is that overtime or?
No, so usually it's adjusted hours. I do have a small budget for a grant for I do these bike rodeos throughout the community. So basically we teach bike safety to kids and hand out free bike helmets to the kids. So we do it at different community events and working on getting them in some schools. So that I do have a budget to pay overtime for, and we usually use the explorers and the explorer advisors for that. So that's what I was talking about, kind of finding creative ways to find, more funding so we can pay more overtime for officers and they can go out and do more outreach and stuff like that.
I'm sorry, maybe I missed some of it. You described that you had an engagement role with the Citizens Academy, but I wasn't quite clear on what that was.
So yeah, I'm the main recruiter for that. So I'll go to all the different, I've recruited at CAG, recruited at Calvary Baptist, I've recruited at refugee provider meetings. I try to get out that message out to as many people as I can. I go on the Nextdoor apps and, I do it out on our Twitter and social media. I work with our PR department to get that message out. So my main focus is working with training to kind of get the people in those seats. So I do all the onboarding process, take all the data and stuff and the people who are coming in the recruitment efforts, and then I get them to training, then training oversees the actual class itself, and they put the curriculum together for those 6 weeks. So I'm basically the point of contact for all those people in the community. They have questions or concerns, and then I do all the recruitment and get them ongoing, ready to go for their Citizen Academy classes. So that's my role, and training does the actual curriculum and teaching the classes.
Right. So given that, I think the state recently just passed the legislation that you can become an officer if you're not a citizen, and you're working with refugee communities and other communities that may not be here as a citizen. Do you find any disconnect in the name of the academy?
Yeah, so I'm glad you pointed that out. So we're getting rid of the name Citizen Academy. We're going to change it to Community Academy, or so. We're just in the process of finalizing the new name. So yeah, we brought that up as well. So because there's Latino Coalition brought up the same thing. So we'll change the name, something more inclusive and stuff. So it's for everybody. We don't do background checks or anything like that. Anyone can come, anyone can attend. So.
Okay, no, that's great. It's just a major heartburn of mine anytime I see the word citizen. So
yeah, no, it's a good point.
And then maybe a final question for me. You described a lot of your work is going out and building trust in communities and things like that as it relates to the police department. Do you find that many communities don't trust the police? I mean, what is it that you're hearing from the communities you engage with?
So yeah, I think so. The problem is I don't hear from a lot of them, right? The people that don't trust the police department. I think that's why it's so integral to get the Latino coalitions and the partnership people like you and this, these community leaders, because sometimes I think they maybe even hesitate to talk to me about the mistrust and stuff like that. A lot of the people I engage with, and that's why it's something like the Citizen Academy is so important, for them to have that one-on-one interaction and go through those 6 weeks to get a real key, like, sit down and go through that academy. Those 3-hour classes are really teachable moments, because I've had some people that maybe don't trust the police department, but then they go through those academies and have that interaction, and they're putting in those different scenarios, and they can ask all the questions that they have in a comfortable environment. And I think that does a lot to kind of help build the trust stuff. So a lot of those I've tried to reach out to certain groups before, and they won't reach out to me because they don't want to be seen working with the police department or other things like that. So I do what I can with the people that want to work with me, but unfortunately there's always going to be some people that, just don't want to work with us. So my job is to try to change their mind or create an environment where we can all come together so they are more comfortable and working with us, and that, we build the trust. We all live in the same community. We all want what's best for the communities.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Parks? All right. Well, thank you, sir. Much appreciate the information, and we look forward to hearing from you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Welcome anytime. So moving through the agenda, continuing the discussion on recruitment, the hiring process, et cetera. The recruiting video was sent out this afternoon. I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to take a look, but I think it's certainly worthwhile if we spend the 3 minutes and 56 seconds, I think, of watching that video. But I don't think I can share it. Coletta, are you able to share it?
Yes, I can share it for you, Dante.
That would be great. Thank you so much. And this is, I think, Lieutenant Zayas, you said this is a fairly new video, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a few years old.
Oh, okay, okay. But you still look good in it.
Well, it's probably about 4.5, 5 years old, actually, now that I think about it, because my son was about 10 months old.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's 5 years. I was on FTO and I had to do that video, and I've been on for over 5 years.
Great, thank you. So it looks like it's about to come up. So thank you, Coletta. The sound is not there, Coletta. Coletta, can you hear me? Nope. Let me text her then.
You all not hear the video?
No.
Okay, I've unmuted. I'm not sure why the sound. Let me try to reshare again. I apologize.
Suspects fleeing, going southbound.
He's got my bag! He's got my bag!
1:30, we got a theft just occurred, 2nd South, Main Street. I'll be in foot pursuit.
Please, stop! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Please, stop! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get out!
Plan. Get to this point, then we're gonna stop. Reassess, shoot, keep it nice and low, okay?
I'm a mother.
I'm a snowboarder.
I'm a personal trainer.
Fisherman.
Skydiver.
Sports enthusiast. I am a brother. Coach.
I'm a European metal fan.
I am a Californian. I am a favorite uncle. I am a triplet. Father of twins. Veteran. mechanic, student.
Musician. Athlete.
I am a listener. Police officer.
I am a police officer.
I am a police officer.
Thank you, Coletta. It was a little choppy, but you certainly get the idea of the whole video. So I'll just open up the floor from anyone, officers, commissioners, just your thoughts on that as a recruiting tool, and just your thoughts in general on the video.
Well, I'll go. I think it needs more minorities. It needs to include more of the community and different minority groups, I guess, and maybe have some community leadership and they're promoting and helping promote the recruitment.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other thoughts?
I really liked the end of the video, which I thought was the best part of it. And I wish it also, the beginning part, I felt like sounded like a video game, and especially starting out with the chase, which I figured probably was a good recruitment tactic to outreach to those young men that want that kind of fast paced, which I agree with Tanya that I wish that there had been more community interaction. That was one of my favorite parts, was the bike officers with the family at the park.
Women don't want to go in that fast chase game environment? I'm just checking. Thank you.
Yeah, I would be curious to know if, what their policy actually is on chases. I don't believe that they chase cars, so I'm not sure that's a good way to start out a video.
Yeah, thank you. Other thoughts?
Come on, Steve. Steve, you have something to say? Come on, man.
I do. I always do. I think we should nominate Munoz for a best supporting actor in that video. I would like to see the video reflect the kind of police department that we want to be, and I agree with Lieutenant Suarez and others about high-speed, low drag does appeal to some people. I don't think it appeals to everyone, and I'm not sure it's a very good reflection of what the job is, because it's a lot of a grind. I know you don't show the most challenging pieces when you're trying to get people to come to your party, but I do think it should all kind of be balanced out. And as others have said, I'd like it to be a lot more community focused. I'd like to see a lot more of those strengths and those relationships. And particularly as we look at it from our commission, where one of our charges is to help impact the culture of police department. And as we look to hire people to come in, I think appeal to the people who do more of that daily community work, and to those that would be drawn from that, as opposed to the exciting parts. I certainly enjoyed those elements occasionally in my law enforcement career, but biggest satisfaction comes from community work and actually doing improving the quality of life, and that's a day-to-day issue. So I would like to see more well reflected in that area, and I think part of our recruiting should be aimed at communities of color, which means that we should have more representation in the video to make it a safe place where you would want to be as you watch that video. So anyway, those are a few thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kayuli, good evening, and did you have a comment?
I was just agreeing with what everyone has said. I did like the last part more than the other parts of it. But I do agree with what everyone's saying about more representation and really reflecting what we would like to see the police department to be.
Thank you. Other thoughts, officers? Would love to hear your voice as well. I guess I'll ask Mr. Parks, do you think this would be helpful, or has this been helpful in the work that you're doing in communities of color?
So yeah, I mean, I've only seen that video a couple times. You know, I think the most helpful part for me for recruitment wise, and you know, I'm not a recruiter, but is to having those conversations one-on-one and, you know, getting into those communities yourself and talking to people, especially with the youth. You know, I think there's a lot of, you know, uneasiness and stuff, and I don't think a lot of youth are particularly keen on becoming a police officer right now. So I think it's very important to have these community programs that target the youth and kind of build those relationships. So I think the Explore program is so important, because, you know, we have those relationships for years and years. And not only that, but they can take these, you know, they can take that experience and stuff that they have with the police department back to their communities, and teach them and educate them, because that's, you know, that's a big tool for us as well. That's what we do at the Citizens Academy as well, is, you know, educate people so they can take that back to their families and their communities and their close circles, and, you know, educate them on, you know, what the police department is all about, and, you know, and I think that's an important role as well. So.
Thank you.
Dante, did you ask me a question? Sorry, I may have missed it.
Not you specifically. I just said I would love to hear any officer voices on that video.
I do have a question. Where is this shown at? I mean, where is this presented at?
We put it on the recruitment when we go and recruit. It's on our website. Obviously, it's on YouTube. I don't know where else it's played, but I know that's where I've seen it in order to recruit. And we did reach out, being part of the recruitment team, we did reach out to the entire department to try to get people to volunteer, for people to talk and be part of it.
Okay, thank you.
I do just want to acknowledge it is several years old, and we're looking at it through the lens of equity and a department with the recommendations that we're trying to make. So while my comments were somewhat critical, and those are improvements that I'd like to see for moving forward as we try to recruit, I guess, a different kind of candidate. That might be a fresh approach. So maybe the recommendation is dating the video with some feedback from the commission, in addition to the recruiters or the folks that would have hands on that project.
I think that's a great suggestion. We're going to need some money to do that too, just so you know. It was pretty costly, I guess, to get this even, because it was professionally done, but it was a good chunk of change. I'm not sure how they did it because it was run by PR.
Yeah. It looked like it was professionally. It was high production quality. Yeah, I think in general, I'm going to throw out to the commission. I could see a lot of value in investing in recruitment. I think we broached the topic of a full-time recruiter last time, and investing in those resources, including this video, or getting cost money to get out into that community and try to bring folks in. But I think it's money well invested, particularly if we're recruiting, again, the officers that are more interested in being a part of community policing department than being in that chase that Officer Suarez or Lieutenant Suarez just mentioned. And even though I've done it and it's exciting, but that's not what police work is on a day-to-day basis.
And appreciate you putting a context to this, Commissioner. I mean, it is 4 or 5 years old. Things have changed in 4 or 5 years, and the focus has changed in 4 or 5 years. And I would suggest that you highlight what you're most proud of. And I would suggest that chasing somebody down the highway running lights and siren is not what you should be most proud of, but those engagements with the community are the things you should be most proud of, as well as obviously the officers who are in the department. Certainly highlighting all the wonderful things you can do in Utah is great, but how do you highlight the realities of the work that you really want to be proud of?
And I think we need to highlight what we do in Salt Lake City, because it is for the Salt Lake City Police Department, not for Utah. I mean, we are in Utah, but we're trying to promote Salt Lake City Police Department and make sure the community has pride and our officers have pride in working in Salt Lake City and working for Salt Lake City Police Department. Sorry, I lost my words. But I think we need to, I think that would be very important to do, is just to show that, because we have to change what people think about the Salt Lake Police Department right now. We had to flip it, because right now I think people kind of don't have faith in the police department. They don't know what's going to happen, and I think we need to change their opinion, their thoughts, and make them feel more comfortable with the Salt Lake Police Department. Sorry, I'm all over the place, but does that make sense? We just need to show that, do a feel-good kind of thing, and make sure that the community understands that, hey, the police department, what you saw last May is not just what Salt Lake Police Department is about, or what they saw and a few incidents that have happened. It's like there's other people, other police officers, and this is what they're doing for community, and this is who we are.
No,
even though those were horrible last year. Don't get me wrong, it was horrible, but I think we need to flip it to a positive.
Thank you. For me, I guess maybe I could sum up my thoughts. Is there was a lot of presentation of the protect aspect of the police department, but minimal aspect of the serve part of the police department.
Yeah, and the engagement, right? So protect and serve is good, but the huge piece that gets lost in that is the key to engagement, right?
I'm kind of combining those two.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. I understand. I just wanted to make sure it got separated out. And I don't know how officers are feeling. I do remember doing the job, and sometimes there are very tight spots. When the chips are down, you want to make sure that you can count on the person next to you to be able to perform and do their work. And I just want to make sure to acknowledge that I agree with that. And it doesn't mean that we can only recruit the high-speed folks, right? And I think a couple of meetings ago, Dr. Prospero, and I wish he were here to express it himself, but I'll try to paraphrase, talked about when he came out of the Marine Corps, that he was not ready to go and work with community because he was so high-end, and a lot of the people that he worked with, he didn't think could turn that off to be able to engage with community, right? So I think you want people that can do both, that can do that community engagement, but it's easier to have that drive to serve and ratchet it up and be this high level and then try to ratchet that back down. So I want to make sure to our law enforcement guests, and I'd love to hear your perspective on it, but there still is a job to do, and sometimes that job is it's difficult, right? And it's but we can train folks to do that too, right? As long as you have that courage to be able to face those, we can train you how to do it. It's a lot harder to have that empathy, be able to engage the entire community, because it's a lot harder to teach that, in my opinion. So I just wanted to make sure that both parts of that scale were acknowledged, but I still support the bringing in that more community-minded officer.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other thoughts? Officers, your thoughts? Anybody?
Can we have one officers tell us how they feel? Or their thoughts? I'll send Steve after you. No, I won't.
Plus, nobody's afraid of me anyway. So, hey, Chief,
So this video
Chief.
for, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so this video is for recruitment, right?
Yes.
The video, yeah. So, I mean, it has to be like a fine balance. You do want to, obviously, get individuals who want to be involved in law enforcement. There's going to be like chasing and, you know, foot pursuits and all that. So like you have to show a little bit of that to get them excited to come join the force. But then I understand too, there's a fine line we're also like police oriented, where being connected with the community as well. So the video has to kind of be, I think, a little bit of both, showing that. But you do want to get people excited, you know. I think maybe another video will be a little bit more current and kind of showing that as well. That makes sense.
You're not being heard, Chief, for some reason. Nope. Nope.
Must not have been a good comment.
You're really, really low. Maybe turn something up because I could start to hear something.
I'm afraid I've built anticipation for my comment that it won't live up to, though.
No.
Okay.
Chief, you may want to try to change your speaker. It may be a speaker issue on the Zoom. But because we can hear you slightly, but not enough. So try that, please. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other thoughts from any of the officers?
I think with anything, you can always do better, right? And I think with something like this, we can take what you guys suggested, which would be, you know, making sure we have the community review it to make it a representation of the department and also the community that we serve, you know.
Thanks. And I would imagine that folks who want to become a police officer already know at some point they're going to be chasing, tackling, cuffing folks. I mean, I guess I would, my opinion would be there would need to be a less show of that, because everybody knows that's what cops do on some level. It's the stuff that is, the other great stuff that is done that doesn't necessarily get highlighted. And Officer Franco, I'm going to push back a little bit, because I'm not sure I want to hire folks who are excited about chasing folks down and tackling them and cuffing them. I want them to be able to do it, but to be excited about that, I'm not sure that's the best emotion I want bubbling up when that's what they have to do. Put the mic next to your mouth and maybe it'll pick up the, I don't know. You might be able to call in. I think there's a call-in number that might also be able to work for you. Right. Commissioner Kayuli, are you back with a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to what you were saying. I think it would be worthwhile for the officers to think about what brought them to policing in the first place. And like what was it about law enforcement that made them want to become police officers? And I think kind of from there is where I would then begin to create, you know, a recruitment video that would speak to individuals who have very, you know, like just really getting from the officers what brought them to law enforcement. Was it the chase, excitement about the chasing of bad guys, I guess is what it said in the video, or what was it that brings you to that? You know, and I think that that's really important and something to think about as we think about a recruiting video.
Thank you. I think, and maybe this is what you meant, officer. I mean, maybe I want somebody who's excited about helping somebody, about saving her purse, about doing those things, and not excited about having to do the chase, right? I don't want to do the chase because I shouldn't have to, because hopefully the crime doesn't happen. What it does, yes, but being excited about helping and serving and saving that person is different than excited about chasing somebody down.
That goes on to play with the chase and helping the person, getting the suspect, and, you know, the whole Hollywood thing, I guess, the way, you know, everybody sees it, but the excitement of that, you know, to get people excited about police work. And I know, like I said, there's also the side of being part of the community, and that has to be shown too. And I agree with that as well.
Can I just say something real quick too? I lived in San Diego before I moved here, and and I went to high school here, but I left when I was really young, so I wanted a different experience and stuff. And part of the reason that drew me back here, and the reason why I wanted to work with Salt Lake City particularly, is because I grew up in low-income areas in Rose Park and Salt Lake City, and I saw this as an opportunity to make a real difference in my community. Had a good job in San Diego, was happy there, but I wanted to do something for the community that I grew up with. I wanted to give back in a way. And maybe if some way we can find more ways to do that, and to kind of pull from Salt Lake City specifically, people that take ownership, that grew up in these areas, and especially these low income areas. I mean, that was the big selling point for me. That's why I came back. I didn't need a recruitment video. I didn't need a whole lot of that. I just needed an opportunity to make real change in my community. And that's what the big draw was for me.
No, thank you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Coletta called me and fixed my computer. And I'm afraid that all of the waiting, I probably built expectations that I'm not going to be able to live up to here. But my thoughts on the recruiting video are that at the time this video was made, we were dealing with some serious recruiting issues, not just from diverse communities, but in general. That our recruiting pool had gotten very, very small, and just it tends to happen when the economy's strong and there are a lot of jobs available to people, especially young people. Our recruiting pool shrinks. And I think that the intent of the recruiting video was, for the lack of a better word, a sales pitch. And I think the folks that we hired, because it wasn't we didn't design it ourselves. We brought in some outside folks that basically make commercials, and they built us a recruiting pitch, a sales pitch, to try to get people interested in the job, to try to increase the recruiting pool, the number of people applying. There was a time, you go back 34 years to when I applied, the day I took the civil service test. There were over 1,100 of us that took that test that day for the Salt Lake City Police Department, for a total of 10 positions. And at the time that our police department made this recruiting video, we were lucky to get 150 people to even submit interest to us. And so if we had 30 openings, we'd be lucky to be able to find 15 people that could successfully complete things like a background check and a psychiatric evaluation. So I completely agree with the comments that were made, but this was never intended to be a public relations video. It wasn't an outreach video. It was intended to be a sales pitch. Come and work for us. That's why they included. That's why they included things like the skiing and those kinds of things, trying to reach out to out-of-state applicants. just trying to sell the police department as a place you want to work. And so I think that the intentions were good. I think that the goal of that was the only goal.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think any of these comments had anything to do with the intentions of folks who put it together or participated in it. So I appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. Other thoughts? Or are we ready to move on? Any recommendations out of this? I think we've kind of come to a general one that there needs to be a new video. And Lieutenant Zayas, if you maybe dig in to see what the production costs were for that, it could be something we could be much more specific about with a recommendation, which is what the city has honestly asked us to do, to be as specific as possible so they know the dollar amounts that might be necessary for whatever recommendations we make. So that would be helpful.
I'll get on it.
Okay, just trying to help out.
And we appreciate it. We are due for a new one.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I think as we go back and forth on this, and I guess I just kind of want to restate that as commissioners, we've been formed to put equity lens on the work of the police department, and I don't feel like it's intended to be an attack or you're not doing it right, but another opportunity for several sets of eyes and people who feel what it's like to live in the community make suggestions for their police department to make it better, right? So I think this video, for example, is like a microcosm of work that needs to be done, where we have a community perspective and we have an equity perspective. We also need to hear the law enforcement perspective about what your needs are. Like one of our specific tasks, this commission was formed, is to look at the culture of Salt Lake City Police Department and make recommendations for what we want it to be. So just to all the officers who are on the call with us, that's right in our charter, right? And so when we talk about using the recruitment video, it should recruit the kind of officers that would be a part of that culture change. And I think that's some of the conversations that we're having now, not going back and saying, boy, you did a terrible job or anything like that. But as we look at it today, through that equity lens with which we are tasked, or the outcomes that we have been asked to create, those are some of the feedback that we have initially, right? And I also think, and I appreciate Officer Franco's speaking up, and also the history from Chief Purvis, but I also think we have to hear from the police department about what they want out of it too, and then come together to create those outcomes. And I think that's what we need to do for this whole thing. So I hope as we look at the video and we made critical comments, that doesn't come across as complaining about our police department, or we're saying, well, you guys can't get anything right or anything like that. Certainly that's not my intent. I don't believe it's the intent of many other commissioners that have spoken with what we're trying to do. So please don't have it be off-putting, but understand that that's our task, and that's the future that we're looking for. So my recommendation is, let's have a good dialogue about what characteristics we want in our police department, and create a video that draws people who are most likely to create that. And I think that should be a joint conversation, right? I think we all agree it needs to be updated. And that way that law enforcement voice isn't left out, and neither is the community voice. Because I think if we look back that video, it is a commercial, it is a sales pitch. I get there's a hook, it gets you interested with the lights and sirens and the funky music. But the community was probably not consulted in the development of that video, right? And that's what we're looking for in a department as we move forward, that's more engaging, more receptive to the community. from my personal point of view, and I think Dustin touched on this earlier, it's hard to get some people to come to the table and have that conversation. But that just means we have to work harder to hear that voice, because it's an important voice and it will improve the quality of our policing and it will improve the quality of our service delivery. And so if we put a video out there that represents the police department and who we want, I think it should reflect the department that we want it to be. And I think that there's a collaboration opportunity here to do that, that I think is part of the bigger picture solution. So I don't know if there was an actual recommendation in there, Dante, but there's few thoughts.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you really highlighting the importance of hearing from and engaging with the police department as well as the community and the commission, because we're all trying to get to the same place, I would imagine, which is the best police department around, period, that is also trusted by the communities, and there is some of that co-creation of how this work will happen. And that's what the definition of community policing is all about, I think, that engagement in all of those areas. So thank you for that. Other thoughts or anything come to mind as Commissioner Andrew Reardon was offering his summary? Chief?
Well, and yeah, I'd just like to also make it clear that we, that's our intent of engagement too, is the opportunity for us to listen and hear. And we've tried that through different avenues, and sometimes it works. I think Dustin pointed that out. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And anytime that we can all sit together and hear points of view rather than just yelling at each other, I think it's a great opportunity. And just the few opportunities I've had to listen to these meetings has been enlightening for me in a number of ways. That's allowed me to sit back and think about things that maybe from a perspective that I didn't before. And so, that's one of the reasons that I'm here, is to represent the leadership of the police department and just let everybody know that that's what we're doing. We're listening, we're trying to learn, we're trying to incorporate the things that we hear here and how those affect us. And maybe some of the things are things we've heard before, but never really heard exactly. And so it's enlightening for us too. So don't get the impression that we're offended when you make constructive comments. And I, for one, have a much thicker skin than that. I can take quite a bit. So don't worry too much about me.
Thank you, Chief. And I hope we are comfortable enough or get comfortable enough with each other to be able to have back and forth, because we're not always going to agree on everything and every detail, but we have to be able to share those conversations and be willing to engage in the pushback and the back and forth, so that we can really get a sense of those different perspectives. And that's, I think, what the beauty of this, hopefully, if it functions like it could or should, that's the beauty of this, is that full engagement.
And Dante, I wanted to just mention that I agree that we ought to be aiming for the department that we want, not for the department that has been. And so whatever we can do to add a budget item, or whatever we can do to get an updated presentation would be helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner. They always say dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Same kind of idea with, I think, the video, to show what it is that we want to be. Okay. So we'll get some, maybe some more information from Lieutenant Zayas or one of her designees that can give us some of that information, and then we can maybe come back together and engage a little bit more specifically around the recommendation that might fit the context of a new video. As we kind of wind down, just want to get back to the hiring process. Sergeant Givens had sent out, because he couldn't be here, some of the criteria specifically for at least getting into the academy through post anyway. But I would just ask you to take a look at that in between this and the next meeting, since it most recently came out this afternoon. So we can really talk about some of that criteria. We had talked a little bit about what might be automatically disqualifying factors? What are the factors that the background investigators are evaluating? What are those criteria? And so I think that's a piece of that. And also we were trying to get Sergeant Givens here this afternoon, but something came up and he just could not be here. So that's why he sent the information that he did. But I think it would be really informative if we could have a conversation with him at the next time after we take a look at some of the information he provided as well. Chief?
I talked to him this afternoon and he wanted me to express that he'll make every effort to be here for the next meeting. His notice was a bit short for this one.
No, thank you. Thank you. But in the meantime, I want to just go back to the recruiting plan that we had briefly talked about last time, because some of you had not really had a chance to digest it, and just want to see if there's any additional thoughts or comments from folks about some of it. I know we had some questions and concerns about 50% of the candidates don't pass the background process, which is kind of why we initiated the conversation about that criteria. Also, we'll be getting some information back from HR about where folks are dropping out in the process. Is it in the psych eval? Is it in PT? Is it in the written exam? Is it in the oral interviews? Where do they drop out in that process? I think is informative, so we can determine what barriers might be in existence, and certainly as it relates to people of color, if they can identify and disaggregate that data of where people of color are most specifically dropping out of that process, I think will also be more informative for the work that we're doing. So hopefully we'll get that information by the next subcommittee meeting. And I'm just scrolling through the document once again. While I do that, any other thoughts on the document itself, the recruiting plan, the lack of a full-time recruiter? I think it was clear as we were, I think it was Officer Franco that was describing some of the recruitment process, but I think the lack of a full-time officer does in fact impede that ability to really do some of that best recruitment, and even as Dustin discussed a little bit. So any other thoughts on the recruiting plan?
Just one thought I had, it's kind of superficial. Well, it's just limited and it's related to those background investigations. So a lot of that, just for the commissioners, a lot of that is put in place by peace officer standards and training. So that's a state level set of requirements. And you can't work for the department if you can't be certified as a police officer, which means you have to qualify at post standards. So just be aware that that's not, if there are impediments that you're uncomfortable with, that's not Salt Lake City putting it in place. It's a state level standard that you have to be able to qualify to be able to get into the academy. So this is one of those deals where we're the Salt Lake City Commission, but we're impacted by rules that come at the state level. And I just wanted to make sure all the commissioners were aware of that as they read through.
All right, thank you. I guess my only question around that would be, I mean, the state standards are the floor. Does Salt Lake City individually have anything that is above the floor of those standards that post requires? Thank you. And we did briefly talk about again, the Citizens Academy, and I am certainly gratified to hear that the name was going to change. But about the curriculum and some of the concern that was expressed by, I think, Commissioner Hawkins about the content, or at least the way it was expressed, and Lieutenant Zayas had talked about change of a couple of the trainers in the Citizens Academy. But I think we are still waiting to get some of the curriculum and the content of the Academy. And I also think it's important to see, going back to the regular training academy and the in-service work, what some of that video training might be, and the representations in those videos, and how that might be impacting what they might be presenting, similar to the recruiting video. And so I'm not sure the availability of seeing some of those, but and certainly we can't just go down to the academy at this point and watch. So we'll see what we can get as it relates to some of that content in the academy. That's all that was on the agenda. I'm happy to give you back a few minutes of your day. Anything else come to mind that we should be discussing as we talk about recruitment and the hiring process at the moment? Any questions that you might have that you would like to get data on? Okay.
I would like to follow up with Mason on some of those practices through the process. And I think as we look at that data that you were just talking about, where officers or candidates drop out, and candidates of color, we can zero in on some of the detail involved in that, and he'll know all the underpinnings of that. So I think that combination of information and that subject matter expertise, I think that'll make for a really good discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, thank you. Okay. Next week is the full commission meeting. And just want to make sure that all the officers know that they are invited and encouraged to attend the full commission meeting, so you can see how the entire body functions together, and there'll be possibly some recommendations coming forward for evaluation by the full commission. So we encourage you to be there and be able to engage and participate in that as well. I think we're good for this afternoon, unless there's anything else that comes to mind, and we'll get you back to an early dinner compared to usual. All right.
Thank you, Don. Oh, oops.
No,
thank you, Dante.
You are most welcome. So thank you, everyone. And we'll get the minutes out to you hopefully soon. And we will see you next Wednesday. But take a look at the information that Sergeant Givers presented. And please, any other information that's been sent out, and I might send out some notes to kind of reinforce some of that information. But until then, we will see you on Wednesday. Stay safe out there.
Thanks, everyone. It's good to see you all.
Thank you, everyone.